All right, let's talk about an absolute powerhouse, the Indian information technology industry. It's a true global giant, and today, we're going to break down exactly what makes it tick. So, let's jump right in.
First things first, let's just start with a number, a really, really big number. $245 billion. That's what the Indian IT industry was worth in the 2022-23 fiscal year. It's just a staggering figure that really sets the stage for how massive this whole thing is.
And this really shows you the journey. I mean, think about it. Back in 2000, we're talking about exports of around $6 billion. Fast forward to today, and that has rocketed to $245 billion. That's a 40 times increase in just over 2 decades. You know, that's not just growth. That's an absolute explosion onto the world stage.
Okay, so here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the big picture, looking at this thing as a global tech giant. Then we'll dig into the secret sauce, what makes the business model actually work. After that, we'll learn how to read its dashboard of key numbers, talk about the risks, and finally, get to the bottom line.
All right, let's kick off with Section 1, a global tech giant. It's kind of wild when you think about it. This industry had some pretty humble beginnings, processing insurance claims and running call centers. But today, India's slice of the entire global IT revenue pie has soared to an incredible 35%. Now, here's where it gets really, really interesting. We talked about that 40x growth, right? Well, that's measured in US dollars. If you measure the exact same thing in Indian rupees, the growth is closer to 80 times. That's double. So, what's going on here?
Well, the answer, and it's a huge factor, is foreign exchange. See, for a business that makes almost all its money by exporting services, the way currencies fluctuate can be a massive, massive tailwind.
So how does this actually work in the real world? This lays it out perfectly. Imagine an IT firm sells a service for $1,000. A decade ago, that $1,000 would have converted into about 50,000 rupees. But today, because the rupee is weaker against the dollar, that same $1,000 sale brings in 82,000 rupees. And here's the kicker. Their revenue in their home currency just grew massively, and they didn't have to sell a single extra service to do it.
So that leads us perfectly into our second section, the secret sauce. Let's get under the hood a bit and look at the fundamental things that define how this giant industry actually works day to day.
There are really 4 core ideas to get your head around. First, it's a service business, which means recurring revenue. Second, it is completely tied to global events, for better or for worse. Third, as we just saw, foreign exchange is a huge part of the story. And finally, because they work everywhere, they have to navigate this incredibly complex web of international rules. Let's dig into those first 2 a little more.
Okay, so this first feature is absolutely key. Indian IT companies aren't really in the business of selling you a piece of hardware or a one-time software package anymore. The whole game has shifted to a subscription model, what we call software as a service, or SaaS. The best way to think about it is like your Netflix account. Clients pay a regular fee, and for that, they get continuous service, updates, and improvements. And for the company, that means a nice, steady, predictable stream of money coming in.
And speaking of global, just look at this chart. About 75% of all the revenue comes from outside India, and the United States alone, it accounts for a massive 60% of the total. So what does that really mean? It means when the US economy is on fire, it's a huge boost for Indian IT. But it's a double-edged sword. If the US economy slows down, you can bet that Indian IT companies are going to feel that pain, and fast.
Okay, let's move on to Section 3, reading the dashboard. Just like your car has a dashboard that tells you your speed and how much fuel you have, analysts use a specific set of numbers, or metrics, to measure the health and performance of these IT companies.
And the first, and maybe most important metric on that dashboard is called constant currency growth. Remember how we saw a weakening rupee can kind of inflate the revenue numbers? Well, constant currency, or CC growth, basically just strips out all that currency noise. It shows you how much the actual core business grew. It's the real, honest measure of performance.
Next up is the order book, and I love this analogy. Think of an IT company like a baker. Their revenue for today is how many cakes they delivered today. Simple enough. But the order book, that's all the confirmed orders for cakes they have for tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. So a big fat order book means that future business is looking really strong.
Now, this slide on client concentration is super revealing. Check out this example from Infosys. They have nearly 2,000 clients. But just 25 of them, the really big fish, account for 35% of their total revenue. This just screams how incredibly critical those top-tier relationships are. I mean, losing even one of those big clients could be a major, major blow.
And finally, on our dashboard, we have the attrition rate. It's a pretty straightforward idea. It's simply the percentage of employees who decided to leave the company over a specific period of time.
So why does this one number matter so much? Well, because in the IT industry, the talent, the people, are the main asset. They're the engine that makes everything go. So when an employee leaves, the company doesn't just lose their expertise, they also have to spend a ton of time and money finding and training a replacement. A high attrition rate is a serious, serious drain on resources.
And that brings us right to our fourth section, navigating the risks. No industry is without its challenges. And when you look at Indian IT, there are definitely some pretty significant storm clouds you have to watch out for.
We can pretty much group these risks into 4 big buckets. First, there's that concentration risk we've touched on. Second, the volatility of foreign exchange rates. Third, the constant threat of your tech becoming outdated. And fourth, the ever-present danger of cybersecurity threats.
And let's be clear about concentration risk. It's not just about having too many big clients. It's also about being overly dependent on a single part of the world, like the US, or a single industry, like banking. If a problem hits any one of those areas, it can send major shockwaves through the whole system.
And then there's the relentless pace of technology. An IT company's whole business is built on having the latest and greatest stuff. But here's the problem. Today's cutting-edge AI solution can become yesterday's news in a heartbeat. That creates this immense pressure to constantly innovate, constantly reinvest in new skills, just to avoid getting left behind.
And all that leads us right into our final section, the bottom line. This is where we're going to wrap up all the key takeaways and take a quick peek into the future.
So let's sum it all up. The Indian IT sector's growth has been absolutely phenomenal, turning it into a global, service-based behemoth. Its success is deeply tied to the health of global economies, especially the US, and of course to currency rates. To measure its true health, we have to look at metrics like constant currency growth and attrition. And all the while, it has to constantly navigate these huge risks from concentration, technological change, and cyber threats.
And that leaves us with one final and really crucial question for the future. We are living in the age of generative AI, and it's a technology that is completely rewriting the rules for everyone. So the big question is, can this massive Indian IT engine, which has adapted so well for decades, pivot fast enough to not just survive, but to actually lead and define the next decade of technology? Now that is something to think about. Thanks so much for watching.